Alexa, set the lights to 100. Hi. A face reveal, or actually, you've seen my face. If you've looked at my old videos. But actually this, me actually putting this on, that's mask reveal. Nobody's talking about mask reveals these days. Catch up, YouTube. Catch up. Anyway, I normally make songs and upload them. And that's just fine and dandy. That's cool. That's whatever. But there's been something on my mind. Why am I so obsessed with slowing down music? And I have not scripted this at all, so we're gonna edit the crap out of this video, and we're gonna make it happen. So let's get started. Now, when I'm talking about slowing down a song, or just any audio in general, I'm not talking about, like, just turning down the tempo. You know, if I've got this little loop here, I'm not talking about that. All right, this is controlling tempo is great, but this isn't that interesting. What I have is a little bit more spicy. When you slow down audio, you are literally like pulling that sound wave apart, right? Because sound waves are just, you know, little vibrations going through the air. So we are taking those vibrations and we are just pushing them slightly less often. And it has this dramatic effect, depending on, of course, how much you just punch it, on how the song actually sounds. So here I have kind of an old work in progress that one day I'll finish. Maybe. TBD. I have billions of works in progress. It's nice. It's chill. So, like, this is a vibe, right? You know, it's got some guitar, it's got some voicing, it's got a little bit of everything. But maybe it's just because I've listened to, you know, when you're working on a song, you're listening to it over and over and over. Let's say that I just, on a whim, I'm going to multiply the length of this by 40%. So now the entire thing is 40% longer than it used to. And if we jump in to one of these older spots and we see how it sounds now, baby. So I wonder if you kind of like, how did that make you feel? Put a comment down below so if I can actually like confirm and see if it like hits different the moment that you slow down something that you're already familiar with. I would use like a great big famous popular song, but copyright. So we're just gonna have to roll with what we got here. Because essentially what you're doing, if you look at a keyboard, let's just pull up some classic FL keys here. And here I've got myself a nice little minor scale here. So let's just pick something we'll do the scale of A minor, which is all of the white keys, which for the perceptive of you out there, also know that that's C major, which is also all of the white keys. Isn't that weird? So we can just do a basic scale going up like this, and we end back on A. So give this a little bit of tempo back. So that is a natural minor scale. And people will have these long debates. I see them on the internet about, you know, does it really matter what scale is something in? Because, you know, back in the day, tuning systems were slightly different. People were still figuring out in Western society how we wanted to tune everything. So at some points, different scales actually sounded differently. Maybe instruments were tuned in such a way that they actually sounded different. But nowadays, especially on a computer, say I want to jump into... You can see right now, all of these white highlighted notes are in scale, and all of the black ones are out of scale. So let's just pick, instead of A, let's just pick a different one. Scale highlighting, let's do E. E. Everybody loves E. And if I pull this down and put my root note on E, well, would you look at that? E, F, G, A, it's all still on these little white highlighted lines. The scale doesn't change depending on what your root note is. You can move any of this all around all the time, and you're just changing, you know, kind of where your low end and your high end is. But what I'm trying to point out is that it's pseudo arbitrary. And why this relates to slowing down music is because when you slow down a song, you're changing everything. You're changing it on a global level. You are changing every single note to go down a certain level. And when you slow down notes, they get lower on the scale. So, you know, maybe slowing down a song written in A, if we slowed it down like 30%, maybe now it's in C minor all of a sudden. But everything has still stayed the same. And as many people know, key changes in songs are sometimes a little tropey, but when you can pull it off, there are these very epic moments of, oh my goodness, I've shifted from this key to this key. Editing note, I'm going to pull up an example. Okay, so here's another example of a key change that I did years ago when I made Xora, which I thought was like the bee's knees. You can listen to the full version in my 4.5 hour video. You just go find the timestamp. But I'm going to point out when the key change occurs and kind of, you know, try to think about how that feels, right? Because all of my music, it's always been about the feels, okay? And then it steps up. Do that one more time, just without me talking. You can just really just embrace it. And so when done well, in a way that it's not super distracting, it actually feels like an uplifting, or, you know, if you're maybe key changing down, kind of like this brooding moment. And it's very significant in a lot of music. And when you just manually slow something down, again, if I just multiply this by some number, let's do 160%, just get more intense with it. What I'm essentially doing is just making a key change on a very global level. I'm kind of forcing a song that I'm already familiar with, and I'm doing a key change on it. And you may have listened to one of your favorite songs 1,000 times, but have you ever listened to it sped up or slowed down? If you have, or I guess, assuming that you haven't, if you were to speed it up or slow it down, you're essentially forcing that song to make a key change, which is very interesting. Just think about how... There's that key change. Think about how different this feels. Because in this particular instance, it's not just the chords and the melodies that have dropped down, but also the drums are lower. So the kick drum is even girthier and bassier and muddier. And the cymbals, if they were kind of tinny before, have almost turned into like shakers. Because if we look here in this little section, this actually shows us what frequencies we have from kind of the limits of human hearing from top to bottom. And because we've slowed down everything, we've actually completely annihilated everything that was in that highest space. And everything has just come down. I could do the same thing, and I could multiply it up a little bit, make it faster. Personally, I don't like the sound of it as much. It's like a little bit too excited for me, but just for the curious. Maybe good for something like Beat Saber, you know? Just really get in there. But then you're also like raising the sub and the kick and everything, so you're losing out on the bass instead of that high end. And personally, I crave the bass more than I crave the high end. But let's think about this in another way. Let me open my many projects where I've done this a billion times. Okay, so this is Roadway Onward. This was moment number 17, as you can see by my little visualizer here. This is the whole thing. I don't sort my projects very neatly. This actually has a shocking amount of layers, considering my average. I so many times see on Reddit, people are like, I have to like scroll down 500 times to like fit their whole song. I ain't about that. I'm too lazy. Speaking of laziness, Growspeed. Growspeed has to be one of my favorite plugins that I have ever touched, and I've become rampantly addicted to because of what I was talking about previously. Kind of forcing a key change on an entire song. And when I originally started doing my moments, I was like trying to do them within like 60 minutes. Eventually, I kind of got carried away and just started working on them longer and longer, especially, you know, seeing as during this one I started like singing. So things kind of escalated there in terms of how much time something would take. So here we have just what the song sounds like before I add in Growspeed. Everything is mixed appropriately. Nothing has been slowed down or sped up. It's just a song. But then, as you can see, in my sneaky little interludes between my A section and B section, I guess, I've got this little automation that turns on this little old plugin called Growspeed. And you can even kind of hear it starting to trickle in right here as it starts to rise in. Listen closely. Turn your ears on. Same way yesterday. Same thing. Over and over and over. So think about how much of a different tone this has compared to what we just played. Everything on the left and right is literally just copied and pasted. I didn't add any extra creativity to this at all, other than making it just like last longer at the end for an outro. And so we'll look at what gross beat is doing here to accomplish this effect. Because obviously I don't have the audio file here that I've just stretched. This is all still happening live, so to speak. But in gross beat, if you're kind of flipping through what are some of FL Studio's kind of stock presets, they have all these crazy things. Like gross beat is normally supposed to be used to just mess with time in like goofy ways. If I just go and jump to something like this. And, you know, mess with the volume. So that certainly has its uses. I'm not diminishing it for that. But I remember one day, little young old me was just kind of looking through all these presets, and then something caught my eye. This thing called slow triplet. I'm like, what does that mean? Slow triplet. It's slowing down each beat. So let's see. I'll just go and make a new little loop here. So let's compare. Without gross beat, we have this tiny little shaker loop. It's playing 4 shakers right next to each other, these little pulses. But we turn on the slow triplet preset. Now there's only 3. There's only 3 of these shaker pulses per every single beat in this bar. This 4th one, it's like it doesn't exist. Because the entire thing is getting stretched out in such a way that you're like slicing off the last half of it. Let's compare the drums before gross beat. Nice and simple. There's a sub bass in there. And then after gross beat. And you can hear this click, because that's every single beat, part of it being cut out. And we're essentially jumping back in time, because each one of these is a beat. And so we can see it's going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, just kind of over and over again. So we're not slowing down we're slowing it down per beat. So we always snap back to the correct position, if you will, in time at the start of every next beat. Like if I were to delete these, just kind of move them up, we would have 2 beats that are slowed down and then 2 of them that are normal time. And this just kind of loops over and over again. If I had any wishes, I would wish that I could make longer loops for this. I mean, there are ways to do that if you're, creative. Again, lazy. And so this specific preset inspired me to go and just make my own preset that just went really hard on this idea. Because the slow triplet is the 3/4 of a beat. So I also made 7/8, which is much more subtle. It doesn't drag the song down quite as aggressively. If we just kind of turn everything back on. This is what I used in the actual song, because it adds like just this little bit of swing and it lowers the voice. Deleted some extra vocals there. But I mean, you can get just more and more aggressive with this. We're cutting it even lower, even more brutally. Go down to playing half of every beat. So we're only playing the first half of the beat, and then we're expanding it to fill the rest of the space. And it sounds pretty bad because of how slow it's getting. Because the thing is that it's still maintaining tempo. Like in our earlier examples, when we were stretching out an entire file, the tempo also went down. But here we're still at 128 beats per minute. Everything just sounds bassier and deeper, and we've also obliterated the snare drum from existence. But what's also interesting is I made these long versions that don't snap to the beat. So we're only playing 3/4 of a measure, which is 4 beats 4 times. So we're, instead of slowing down each individual beat, we're slowing down 4 beats and basically cutting out the 4th beat. And I have done this preset in many songs as well. I still like it. I just like listening to this. Like, it makes that original sound so much different. And it's so easy. And I'm very lazy. Because once I've made my big, like, first thing, I don't... Like, sometimes making a B section is just really difficult. And I personally am deeply in love with the sound of music that's being slowed down. It just hits different. You know, it just hits different. And so I've done this again and again, and I will keep doing it because I love doing it. Even in Sui Generis, same thing. I was just messing around with gross beats. Sometimes I'll layer multiple of them on each other, then pitch it back up, so that way it almost sounds like it's the same pitch, but now the tempo is rearranged. It gets super crazy with it. And of course, I had to make a preset for, well, what if I wanted to play things backwards? So what if we did the slow triplet, but backwards? Because this dark line represents what would be complete silence. Like, the lower we get to this line, like if I were to actually just drag this here, you wouldn't hear anything on that first beat. Because we've essentially reached the speed of 0. But if we actually force ourselves past that point, if we just go past it, then we're in negative speed. So you'll notice that, like, that first beat is kind of missing because gross speed is trying to get data so that the next beat actually can be played backwards. So it's always like missing the first time, but then once you're rolling, then you're just rolling. To even show this a little bit better, I also made a few alternating patterns. So this is at normal speed, but the second and fourth beat will always be reversed. And so it's like you're playing the first beat, and then you're playing that exact same beat, but backwards. So it's like you're gonna swell in, and then you swell back out, and then you just jump from that first beat to wherever the third beat is. You can hear that pull every time. If I like slowed this down aggressively, I don't know what that would even sound like. You can even hear that snare drum right at the end as it kind of sucks back in. And I'm completely in love with this. And you cannot convince me to stop. I will not stop. I will keep going. I will keep doing this. So let's look at another example of where slowing down music can be rather unique. And it's something that I don't do too often, but I did it recently in, I believe it was 23? No, 22. Sleep Doesn't Occur to Me. And also Finding Beauty at like 6:30 or 5:30 a.m. or something like that. So say I have this song here. This is River Nuance, from like early on. A lot of people probably don't even like this because it sounds like pretty dissonant at the end. I love the broken sound, which is probably why I kind of partly appeal to this slowed down aesthetic as well, because it's like kind of lo-fi. Because lo-fi is like, it's on a kind of a scratchy, dusty record, and it's slow, and it's a little bit broken, it's a little bit hard to hear. And that's, there are various ways to accomplish that. So normally, let's say kind of like earlier, we could just multiply. Let's just make it twice as long. And like, oh dear. That is too low. My subwoofers are going to explode. Like everything sounds bad. We've gone too far. And so of course, most DAWs have this option where instead of the audio file just kind of going with the flow, there are algorithms that exist. This is E3 generic elastic. I don't know what the hell that stands for. Probably invented by some company. But we can actually try and keep the pitch of everything that's going on in the song, but it will always sound like crap. Like, what the hell is going up there in the high frequencies? It's this, like, raspy, tingly grossness that makes it completely unlistenable. You haven't just slowed it down. Now you're trying to adjust for slowing it down. And, like, when we think about music, when we, like, really zoom in here, I mean, you can see each of these individual waves, right? So when you're speeding, if we were to go the opposite direction and make it half as long, a lot of those artifacts wouldn't necessarily appear. Like, it sounds more or less like the song, but just extremely slow or extremely fast for some reason. But when you're slowing things down, each little wave, for a computer to be able to process it, you're jumping from one data point to the next, right? So I'm jumping from, when we think of speakers as going in and out, I'm jumping from like -5 to +5, and then +6, and then down to, -4. And we're creating all these complex sounds somehow by magic, by just wobbling a speaker back and forth. And that can produce this variety of sound. But when you're slowing something down and trying to keep the tempo, you have to invent new data to fill in the gaps. You have to add points, and the computer is just trying to guess the best that it can on how to deal with those gaps. And so it just like kind of makes up data points in between. And that's really what causes a lot of this artifacting. Like, yes, we have generally maintained the pitch, but we haven't quite gotten the perfect algorithm. I've heard it seems like in Ableton, maybe they've got some better ones, but it's not going to be perfect anywhere. But there are solutions to this problem. Not necessarily solutions, but creative ways that you can interact with it. I initially kind of learned about this idea in Audacity, which is a free program. You can download it. You can import your favorite song into it and try this out yourself. there was a button called pulse stretch. And what pulse stretching was doing was kind of what we've already done here. It was slowing down a piece of audio that you gave it. It was then correcting it so that it would be at the same pitch that it was before. But then to deal with all that graininess and grossness, it just blurs everything. Because those little like individual tingles are very obvious when they're just right next to each other and they're very clear. But if you just blur everything, then it doesn't sound like it stands out as much. And so it almost just kind of fades away into this extra high frequency presence, and it's not quite as aggressive. So I do this. Pulse stretching in Audacity is like a process that you have to apply, but I like to do this, you know, if I'm going to do it during a song or something, then I do it with Fruity Convolver. Now, this convolving in reverb is a whole nother topic I don't want to get too far into. Jorts does a great explanation on our most recent phase cancellation episode, so you can check that out. But normally it's used for applying reverb. If I just pump this up and take the dry out, you can hear what would be someone adding the reverb effect to a song. But one of these presets is just called Blur. And I prefer choosing Blur Pink because it's less aggressive on the high end. But like, look at this. Instead of that little impulse before, that impulse is used to create the reverb. So we're kind of basically running all the audio through this thing and adding that reverb, that impulse sound response to the audio. But here we've just got a giant rectangle of completely random noise. So it's not even like actual real life reverb anymore. We're trying to combine a sound with this blanket. This from top to bottom frequencies blanket of noise. And it's already pre-applied everything. You take out all of the original. And then we add this volume envelope so that, you know, instead, if a kick drum were to be played right here, you don't actually hear the kick instantly. You hear it kind of fade in up to this point, and then you hear the remainders of the kick for quite a while. So we're stretching things not in a way that's changing the pitch, but in a way that's changing kind of how active the song is on the entire frequency spectrum. So you can hear everything is kind of washed out now, and it's very like cerebral and ambient. And I love doing this, especially again to songs that you love. You know, like melodic songs usually works best for this kind of thing. Like, I can slow this down even more. I could slow this to 4 times as long as it's supposed to be. And then theoretically, you could render that and slow it down even more and even more. So the song is completely wide. Every 1 second that it used to take is now taking 4 seconds. The entire song of River Nuance would now take almost 7.5 minutes to get to completion. But everything just kind of it flows together in a different way, because we've taken out a lot of that artifacting. It's still in there, but we've essentially masked it by blurring the living hell out of it. You know, if you were to take a photo with, you know, like maybe you had some pimples on your face and you just blurred the whole photo a lot, you probably wouldn't notice the pimple. You also don't notice anything else that used to be there, but the pimple's gone, right? But this is actually an interesting sound that we can use in different songs to, you know, have this little change up, or even just like I'll just do this in my free time. Like I'll just drag in some of my favorite songs, whether they're mine or, you know, some of my favorite artists. Just, you know, I'll mess with slowing them down first, just resampling them. Then I'll bring the pitch back up and then throw on this convolver blur. There's so many ways that you can change something you already love, something that was already great, and something that you've heard so many times. And you can listen to it in a new way. You're not like destroying the original. You're not trying to remix it. You're not making a cover of it. It's the same fundamental audio, but whether you're slowing it or throwing a gross beat on it or blurring the hell out of it, it changes the way you hear it. Like that key change that we were talking about before. It's the same song, but now it hits different. And I wish there was like a less memey way to say it, but that's the best way to describe it. The song suddenly hits different, and you get a new perspective on what that audio is. And, you know, back to that scale argument, it's like, it's all relative. Like I'm just doing key changes by slowing down or speeding songs up. And I will just listen to these forever. I will keep making them. I love them dearly. You cannot stop me. You simply can't. So, I propose. Try a deal. I give you more slowed down, gross beat, blurred music, stuff to play with, and you hit that like and subscribe button. This is officially the first time on the Omen Protector channel that I am asking for likes and subscribes. At this moment, I have 69 subscribers, which is hilarious. But actually getting to 100 subscribers would be meaningful to me personally. You know, because I put a lot of effort into this stuff. You know, I like listening to it. Again, as I've talked about before, and depending on how much you know, I make music for me. It always, you know, my music's all over the place, and sometimes it's just like deranged, loud angriness for no reason, because it's always been a way for me to just vent my own emotions. I've always made my music for myself. But being able to share those emotions, like, you know, instead of you bottling up your emotions and then just going berserk, if you're able to share them with a friend, it, you know, I'm not a professional psychologist, but that does something. That means something. We receive some mental feedback from that. And so every time that I, you know, have a friend or someone leaves a comment about, you know, enjoying a particular song, like, it means the absolute world to me. Because it's like my emotions have left my heart and my brain and my soul. They've been pushed to this computer, and someone else has like picked them up and received them and kind of understood them, you know? So that got way deeper than I imagine most like and subscribe things do. But yeah, I mean, you know, if you like my music, you know, if you haven't checked it out, go listen to it. If you like it, you know, subscribe for more. You can hit that bell, because even if you're subscribed, honestly, YouTube doesn't care. They just care what's in your recommended. But the bell gives you notifications, so you'll never miss out on a new moment or a video like this. Maybe in the next video, I will have shaved this horrible neck beard. Maybe even cut my hair. Who knows? Who knows how long it'll be? But that is all I had to say for today. I just really had to get that off my chest. This whole slowing down thing. Because I almost feel like I have to like defend myself because I put gross beat as like a B section for so many things, but I love it. If you're curious about kind of trying this out yourself in like the easiest way possible, there's an app. I don't know if it's on the iOS store. Sorry, Apple users, but it's literally just called Music Speed Changer, and you can load up any files. You have to have them actually on your device, so like you can't use stuff through Spotify or anything. But if you have downloaded music, then you can go into it and you can set the rate at which it's playing. It's right here. Like, I literally fall asleep to this. I have just this like playlist, and I have everything playing at like 70 or 60% speed, and then I add like a little bit of equalization and then just a big lather sloppy bit of reverb. I fall asleep to that just in like 5 minutes. And it's a great way to re-listen to some of your favorite music and feel like you're listening to it for the first time again. It's a great experience. I highly recommend it. So, thank you all so much for watching my first ever, like, actual video. Leave any feedback down below, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Take care.